Welcome back to my channel at The Movie Optimist, where I find even the silver linings in the worst of movies. Today I'm here to talk about last week's movie news and the things that I found the most interesting. It was reportedly broken by Deadline that Kathleen Kennedy will be retiring from the role of producer of Star Wars. For the last 13 years after George Lucas handpicked her to take over for him when he retired, she has been spearheading the Star Wars films in the Disney universe, and some would say to some divisive results. Because on one hand, look, you could say what you want about the sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens is the highest grossing domestic movie of all time, and all three of those films made $1 billion. So even if they dropped in quality, they still netted Disney a lot of money, so it makes sense why they would want to keep her around. Mandalorian is wildly successful, at least the first and second season were. The third season kind of dipped in quality, but that's not necessarily a Kathleen Kennedy problem as much as it's a writing problem. I liked Solo, A Star Wars Story. I thought that movie was a lot of fun and got a lot of hate when it didn't deserve it, and Rogue One was really good as well. That ending scene with Darth Vader is living rent-free in my mind for the rest of my life. It is peak excellence in the Star Wars universe, and I love Andor. That TV show is fantastic. It's the greatest thing that Star Wars has done since the original trilogy. If you're not watching it, what the hell is wrong with you? Sure, it doesn't have lightsabers and space battles and all this stuff that you expect out of a blockbuster movie, but it has such deep, rich storytelling with characters that you really love, and an arc and a goal with the main characters that's really compelling to watch. So Kathleen Kennedy has done a lot right in the Star Wars universe, but she's also done a lot wrong. How many projects has she announced that fell through the wayside? We have the Benioff and Weiss movies that were going to be done, which was like the Old Republic era. You had Lord and Miller doing Solo before they were fired and replaced by Ron Howard because Kathleen Kennedy didn't like the direction that they were taking it. Then you have the Patty Jenkins movie where they literally spent a budget making a commercial where Patty Jenkins was rollerblading onto set where an actual X-Wing was waiting for her in the background to announce that she was going to do a Rogue Squadron movie. Then you have the Taika Waititi film. Then you have the Sean Levi film with Ryan Gosling. Then you have the James Mangold film where he's doing the Dawn of the Jedi, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. She announced at least 20 projects that have all just disappeared, and it just seems like she can't get her bearings in order, and when they do strike success, when they do find a win, it's not so much tactic or strategy as much as it's just luck that she found someone that just figured out the recipe. Now, a lot of people don't like Kathleen Kennedy, and I think that that's absurd. Steven Spielberg, who is, I don't care if there's no argument, the greatest director of all time, literally said she is the greatest producer of all time. Kathleen Kennedy does a great job helping creatives get their movie made. But what Kathleen Kennedy is not is a great studio head for this franchise. So Deadline broke an article pretty much saying that she was going to retire, she was stepping down, and Disney was going to find her replacement. And then that flip-flopped a couple days later, and she was like, no, I'm not retiring just yet, but we are starting the process of finding somebody to replace me, and I'm going to kind of help spearhead that transition. And rightfully so. Some people are mad about this, but look, at the end of the day, she is still an award-winning movie producer that has netted Disney billions of dollars. She started new little franchises within this universe like The Mandalorian, which we're about to get a full feature-length movie with Jon Favreau directing. And even outside of her Star Wars stuff, she has produced some iconic movies for iconic directors. So I think that she is deserving of the chance to retire on her own merits, the way that she wants to, leaving this legacy behind in hands that are going to care for it. I think that she's earned that right. Do I think that the movies that she's really passionate about right now are going to get made? I don't know. She's really gun-ho on getting this Daisy Ridley sequel off the ground, and I don't know if that's the right decision because, look, at the end of the day, I love Rey. I thought that she was a great character, but her movies are so divisive, and I don't think that we need to go back. I think we need to move forward. Let's go 100 years in the future and tell a new Star Wars story with new characters, with new Jedi, a new problem, new disturbance in the Force that a new young group of heroes has to kind of get together and stop from taking over the galaxy. I'm okay with James Mangold doing like a Dawn of the Jedi. That's cool because we've never seen that before. And I really want to see an Old Republic story because that video game, Knights of the Old Republic, is one of the greatest Star Wars video games of all time. But what we don't need is to go back into the Rey Skywalker story arc. Now, I am a little nervous because there is some speculation that she's going to appoint Dave Filoni to be her successor, and I don't think that's a good idea. I thought Ahsoka was okay, and I thought that the episodes of The Mandalorian that he did was good, but he is so invested in the George Lucas camp of storytelling. He was George Lucas's successor, and he believes so deeply in the mythology and the rules that George Lucas set up to create a Star Wars movie that if they appoint him, we're just going to keep getting more of the same. And I get it for all the diehard Star Wars fans out there that love George Lucas for creating this franchise, but he almost destroyed this franchise with the whole midichlorian nonsense. I love George Lucas. He created one of my favorite franchises of all time. But the only way that Star Wars survives is if it evolves. It's adapt or die, and it needs to evolve into something new, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And I don't think Dave Filoni is that guy, because she's just going to give us more of the same. So I really do hope that Kathleen Kennedy and Disney understand this and get some new blood in there that's going to inject some much needed originality into this franchise. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I think Kathleen Kennedy is a great person and a great producer, and she's trying her best. She's failing at it. She's not a great person to be running Star Wars, but I really want to see her get back to making original movies with people like Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, and all these other iconic directors. Coming in at number 4, it broke a couple days ago that there were test screenings for Superman, and it was doing a lot better than its original test screenings that took place in December. And I'll say this, 9 times out of 10, I do not believe the test screening reports. I believe that we live in a world where everything is social media run. It's not like newspapers anymore, and there's 1,000 different media outlets online that are struggling to get you to click on their link over other people's. And I believe that people lie. I really do. At the end of the day, I just think that people make up bullshit. So you click on that link, you go to their website, even if it's something as stupid as Mike's Convenience Center in the backyard of my house.com. Like, you'll just click it because it has a catchy headline, something like Superman screen for audience, and they hated it. Of course you're going to click it because if you're a superhero fan, you're probably excited for that movie, and then that generates ad revenue for that website. So they don't care that they're lying, and then they'll quote an anonymous source. You can't put the blame on them if it turns out that it was wrong. And James Gunn kind of came out and addressed the reshoots, which he hasn't really done yet, and he gave a really honest and I think believable answer as into what happened. He pretty much said, look, at the end of the day, I don't like reshoots because it wastes everybody's time and it wastes money. But sometimes when I'm watching a cut of the film that I'm editing together before it releases, I'll look at like a fight scene and I'll be like, oh damn, I really wish I got a shot of Superman's fist landing on this guy's jaw, like a close-up of it. So they'll go back and they'll pick up like tiny little reshoots like that. And at the end of the day, I really think that that's what it is. I make short films on the side. I am a big lover of filmmaking and cinematography, and I've made quite a few short films on a different YouTube channel that I'm not even gonna plug here, but so many times when I get in the edit bay and I'm cutting things together, I'm like, damn, I wish I had a light on this back wall over there that was too dark, or damn, I wish I had a close-up of this person's eyes while he was learning this information from another character, or damn, during this fight scene, I wish I had a shot of his over the shoulder doing this. And I understand what James Gunn means saying that, because you could storyboard all you want before you film a movie. Sometimes when you're watching it unfold in the edit and everything's flowing together the way a movie would once you splice the scenes together, you didn't realize when you were storyboarding, like, shit, I could have used this shot that I'm not realizing until now, having seen the footage that I already shot. So at the end of the day, I really think it is just that. I think he went back in to kind of just touch up little things here and there. I don't think that's anything drastic, and I don't think anyone saw the movie in December and hated it and said it was a train wreck and a disaster. Look, I'm not sitting here and saying I'm putting $1,000 on this movie is going to be incredible, but James Gunn hasn't really missed, man. I mean, he gave us Slither, he gave us Super, which were 2 really good indie films. The Guardians trilogy is wonderful. I love the first one. The second one was kind of okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. And then the third one I thought was the best of the 3, and it was so heartfelt and such a fitting ending to them. And he is such a big DC fan that I can't imagine he's gonna go in and make the very first movie in this new DC reboot a train wreck. Like, he's gonna put his all into it. He's gonna give it all of his heart and his attention and his time and his energy. And from what we've read before, everyone loved the script, so I can't imagine the finished filmed project that was supposedly screened for people was as disastrous as some people are making it out to be. I really just believe it's clickbait nonsense, and I wouldn't really go too much into it. Jeff Schneider, who is a big scooper online that a lot of people trust because he gets 9 out of 10 things he says right, literally just came out and said that the recent test screenings that they've done for the film, now that it's pretty much done, are testing very well, and people should be excited because we got something good coming our way. So it is a good time to be a DC fan. And look, everybody, please, when you see these articles online talking about this movie's gonna be a disaster, test screenings, yada, 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 look where the link is coming from. Look at the website. If it's not coming from the Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, or anything actually reputable, don't give in to these stupid online clickbait nonsense bullshit websites that are coming from people's basements. It's not worth your time, your energy, or your stress. Just be excited that we're getting a new DC universe, and in James Gunn, we should all trust. Coming in at number 2, I read an article from Deadline that pretty much was talking about how there is a large number of people in the voting members of the Academy that aren't watching every movie nominated at the Oscars. So what that means is John Schmo from Idaho watched 2 out of the 10 Oscar movies that are nominated and only voted based off of those 2. And to some people it's like, yeah, so what, big deal, he didn't, watch the rest of them, what does it matter? It matters because it is the most prestigious award show for movies on the planet, and you have 10 movies that are nominated for Best Picture, and the people that are voting on that are gonna get these actors and producers and directors these awards that are gonna boost their careers into stardom aren't watching all of them. That's like being a food critic where you're known for reviewing all different kinds of food, but you only eat chicken and steak. So you're only ever reviewing chicken and steak. And it's like, but what about the Indian food? And what about seafood? What about desserts? It's like, you can't call yourself the food critic and only review one type of food. You have to review it all. If that's the case, then call yourself the chicken and steak critic, where that's all you review. That's kind of what's happening here at the Oscars. You are lucky enough to be somebody that gets to vote on these things, and you're not watching all of them. I saw one of the people said, it's like, oh yeah, we saw the first Dune and we didn't like it, so we skipped out on the second one. I don't give a shit if you didn't like the first one. It is your fucking job to watch all of these movies and give them all a fair shot. And if you're not gonna do that, then get the fuck out of there and let somebody else that's willing to do that and give these movies all a fair shot, give that person the opportunity to do it and leave. It is embarrassing that people this high up in the Oscars are getting away with doing stuff like this. It is embarrassing. You are an embarrassment. If you are one of the voters watching this, which no one's gonna watch this, I'm a nobody, but if you're one of the people watching this and you're a voter and you only watch half the movies that are nominated, you're a joke. You're an absolute joke, and this just makes me think more that the Critics' Choice Awards are the most prestigious because everyone voting on those films are the people like us that go out and watch everything. I have seen every nominated movie, so my opinion, me, a nobody, means more to these actors and actresses and producers and directors and makeup artists than yours does. I think that the Oscars should take this really seriously because I myself, look, at the end of the day, the Oscars is my favorite day of the year. It's not the Super Bowl, it's not my birthday, it is the Oscars. It's the day that all of these films that I've spent all year showing up to watch after a long day of work during my 9 to 5, shoving popcorn in my face and watching. It is my favorite day of the year, and I love watching the people that I loved watching get noticed and recognized by the world and put up on a pedestal and given these awards to. It's their hard work getting paid off, and I love that. But I don't love that some of the people that are gonna win tonight are only winning because the people that voted for them only saw the movie that they were in. How could you say Timothée Chalamet was the best of the year if you didn't watch The Brutalist and seen Adrian Brody? How could you say Dune 2 isn't better than A Complete Unknown if you haven't watched it? It's not fair, it's broken. The Oscars needs to take this seriously and weed out these people not watching everything and put some kind of rule in place that you can only vote if you watch everything. That's how it should be with any type of review content, whether it's food, whether it's sports cars, whether it's movies, whether it's music. You shouldn't be voting in music about, Beyonce being the best country singer if you haven't listened to every other singer that was up for that award that year. Like, that's just how it works. Get your fucking shit together and do your fucking job. And coming in at number 1, James Gunn and Peter Safran sat down and gave a bunch of reporters some updates on the DCU, where it stands, things that are coming out, things that might get kind of canceled, and I'm here to talk about it, but I'm gonna warn you now, it's gonna be a little lengthy, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read the article in real time. I'll probably edit it down to be a little bit quicker for all of you that are watching, so just know that if this is a half hour long, it was probably more like an hour before I edited it, and if it's 20 minutes long, it was probably more like 40, but for the sake of really diving into this, there's no way I can remember it all off the cusp of my head, so I'm gonna read it with you guys and then kind of touch on it in between segments. Anyway, let's begin. So it starts off with them sitting down and talking about how They both look a lot older since the last time they were there, even though it was only like a year or two ago. They start off by breaking some jokes and getting the audience kind of comfortable with being there. And then it goes on to saying this: a lot has happened with DC in just 2 years. Gunn is deep in post-production on Superman, the first DC Studios movie, which he wrote and directed while simultaneously working on post on season 2 of the Max series Peacemaker. Director Craig Gillespie is halfway through production on the summer 2026 film Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, with Millie Alcock, and production has started on the Green Lantern HBO series Lanterns with stars Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre, which is aiming to debut in early 2026. Along with those updates over the course of an hour, Gunn and Safran held forth on several topics, including the status of their initial slate of 5 films, including Batman the Brave and the Bold, The Authority, and 5 TV series, including Waller and Booster Gold, as well as confirmation about a handful of other projects, including a film about Batman villain Clayface, a prospective live-action movie about the Teen Titans, an animated series about Blue Beetle, and the future of Sergeant Rock, now that Daniel Craig has withdrawn from consideration for the title role. Safran noted that DC Studios is ultimately aiming to release 2 live-action films and 1 animated film per year, and 2 live-action and 2 animated TV series per year. But the executives also reiterated the overall philosophy guiding their creative choices, namely that no project will get greenlit until Gunn and Safran are satisfied with a completed screenplay, which I think is huge. How many times has Kathleen Kennedy announced a project before they even have a script for it, and then they can't get it right, so it gets canceled? So it's like, you got us all excited for nothing. I think that this is really smart, and they're not going to announce things until they get it, and they're like, yeah, this is great, we can start production on this in a couple years, which I also think some people don't like, because it's like, how are you going to have a roadmap, but then take on random things like Clayface that you didn't anticipate? And it goes back to James Gunn saying, they're not creating one giant story with 15 characters. Each character is going to have their own story, and then eventually it's going to converge in a Justice League film down the line, but you won't have to have seen everything to enjoy the Justice League, because the Justice League is going to be its own story unto itself. So when somebody like Mike Flanagan comes up to him with a script he wrote for Clayface, and it's amazing, it's like this body horror, psychedelic movie within the DCU, yeah, even though it doesn't intertwine with what happened in Superman, they could do that because they're not telling one giant story until they get to the Justice League films. And I think that that's really exciting, and it gives a lot of indie filmmakers a chance to kind of shoot their shot in the DCU. Whereas in Marvel, you have to follow the strict guideline of events leading up to the Avengers. It's hard enough making a good movie with a good script, Gunn said. It's almost impossible making a movie with a script that you're writing on the run. This is why, for example, they greenlit Clayface on the strength of Mike Flanagan's screenplay, even though, as Gunn said, we have had no plans on making a Clayface movie. This approach stands in pointed contrast with DC Studios' obvious counterpart, Marvel Studios, which has quite famously announced many movies and their release dates without anything close to a finished script. Look at what's happening with Blade. Big mistake, getting a lot of people that are Blade fans really upset. But this is an issue that Gunn and Safran first raised in their 2023 presentation, and Gunn has repeated it several times since on social media. In general, the overall presentation on Friday, while informative and insightful, lacked a sense of immediate urgency. There weren't any major announcements, even as Gunn and Safran alluded to the other unnamed DC projects that they're excited to talk more about at some future date. Then they go on to 2 Batman movies, Clayface and The Penguin Season 2. Given that Batman has remained the most consistently successful DC character in film and TV for decades, it perhaps should not be a surprise that Gunn and Safran spent considerable time on updates about DC Studios' expansive intentions for the Caped Crusader. First up, Clayface. Safran confirmed that British director James Watkins, who did Speak No Evil with James McAvoy, is in talks to direct what he characterized as a body horror film, and Gunn said they hope it works as a pure horror movie for somebody who doesn't care at all about DC. This is really fucking smart, because people won't feel like they need to watch all 36 movies leading up to Clayface. They could just tune in and watch it and not feel lost. They plan to start shooting this summer and have also started the casting process. Gunn has said that actors who voice a role in an animated project will also play them in live action, but while Alan Tudyk has voiced Clayface in the DC animated series as a buffoon in the Harley Quinn and as a ruthless assassin in Creature Commandos, Gunn said that he won't play the role in the feature film since that wasn't a primary role for Tudyk, who also plays Dr. Phosphorus on the Creature Commandos. Safran offered a brief update of sorts on the Batman Part 2, saying that writer-director Matt Reeves has yet to turn in a full script, but what we have read so far is incredibly encouraging. They had even less to say about the possibility of a second season of the spin-off series The Penguin, with Colin Farrell following the release of Part 2. We don't know, Safran said. There are a lot of moving pieces, probably most important Colin himself. And then James Gunn joked about the prosthetics that he puts on, saying, and 800 pounds of makeup. DC Studios also remains in active development, Safran said, on Batman the Brave and the Bold, the film meant to bring the Dark Knight into the main DCU. Reeves' Gothamverse exists in its own timeline. That story is coming together nicely, Safran said, and Gunn added that he has been especially focused on the project given that everybody knows I love Batman. Me too, James. Me too. Unfortunately, Gunn said it was very unlikely that the Batman star Robert Pattinson would reprise the role for the Brave and the Bold, but he did not foreclose the possibility possibility that the DCU version of the character could show up before this titular film. I wouldn't rule anything out, Gunn said. He could show up in something else, but the actor doesn't exist yet. I think you're lying. I think they do exist. You're not this far into the DCU and have not even considered what actor is going to be in it, and not for nothing, but everyone on the planet would want to be Batman. He is the most iconic superhero, maybe next to Spider-Man and Iron Man of all time. I personally think it's Alan Richardson, but just briefly touching on the Robert Pattinson aspect of it, I think that this is great that we're going to have two Batmans, one grounded in reality in the Matt Reeves verse, and then one that deals with the more fantastical in James Gunn's verse. I would not want to see Robert Pattinson trying to figure out how to stop a Superman or a Clayface. I want to see the two different versions of Batman, and that will give me the fix that I want. It wouldn't make sense for Matt Reeves' world to out of nowhere adopt magic and powers and monsters. Whereas in the James Gunn verse, he's starting off with Superman. We got lanterns on the way where dudes fly around with magic rings. We're gonna have this Clayface body horror monster film. I want to see what Batman exists in that world. And given the character that we saw in Creature Commandos, the outline of that Batman, it looks like Alan Richardson because it is a jacked, yoked fucking Batman, but I think that they could exist simultaneously and be just as successful. Now, going on to the topic of James Gunn saying Batman could show up before his first movie. He's being cheeky and coy about it. He is 110% gonna show up before his own movie because that movie is at least 3 years out from coming out, and they're not gonna wait that long to introduce Batman, especially given that there's so much riding on this Superman film. What is gonna get people excited? Batman. He's your most bankable superhero. He is the hero that keeps getting movies put out that continuously do good. It's the reason why Batman vs. Superman made as much money as it did. Everyone loves Batman, and you're not gonna hold him back when you're trying to build a new universe. I would not be surprised if we get little glimpses of him in Superman. I'm not saying that an actor's gonna show up in costume, but a reference, maybe a newspaper article where you see the silhouette of Batman flying across the city. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up at the end of Clayface to take Clayface down. You don't need it to be a Batman movie where he's taking on Clayface. You could have it centered on Clayface as the main character, going through what he's going through, which is essentially he is a struggling actor that winds up having this horrible thing happen to him where he can morph himself into other people because he becomes made of clay during this horrible accident. And I love that they're going the body horror route where they're going to make it kind of horrific when he transforms into other people. But how do you stop that? He's invulnerable to bullets, so cops can't shoot at him. And I think it's really smart to have at the very end of this tragic story that they're telling in Clayface, to have Batman show up, introduce who the actor playing him is, have him take down Clayface tragically, and you're giving the world their first version of Batman at the end of it. I think that that would be really smart, and I don't think it would take away from the movie Clayface because you're still going to have the hour and 55 minutes of him going through this horrific transformation, and then it's just going to end with the fan favorite character in Batman coming to save the day. So if I was going to put money on it, I would say we are absolutely going to get Batman before his own movie. Then we're moving on to animation, where they announced the dynamic duo Blue Beetle and 3 new TV series. As first reported in October, DC Studios is in pre-production on the animated feature film Dynamic Duo, Safran said, about the two Robins who fought alongside Batman, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. It provides a kind of perfect on-ramp for family audiences into the world of Gotham. The studio is also still in active development on an animated series about Blue Beetle. That would continue the events from the 2023 feature film, which were one of the last titles made under the old DC regime. Safran said he expects the executive producers Angel Manuel Soto, who directed the film, and Gareth Dunnett Alcocer, who wrote the screenplay, to present the project for a possible green light pretty soon. Miguel Puga is directing the series and Christian Martinez is writing. He also announced that they greenlit 3 younger skewing animated series, all overseen by executive producer Sam Registernand, produced by Warner Brothers Animation and DC Studios. My Adventures with Green Lantern will follow high school student Jessica Cruz, who has her life upended when, according to an official logline, a Green Lantern power ring falls from the sky and chooses Cruz to be its champion. Things get even worse when more debris from the Lantern's ancient space war arrives, along with their alien foes. Jake Wyatt is executive producing, and Stephanie Gonzaga is a co-executive producer. DC Superpowers takes place at the Alliance School for Heroes and focuses on new students Lightning, Flash, Plastic Man, Aquagirl, Green Lantern, and Terra, who level up their powers under the supervision of Principal Martian Manhunter in the hopes of one day graduating and becoming the next generation of Earth's defenders. Matt Beans is executive producing, and Michael Chang is a supervising producer. That sounds a lot like My Hero Academia, and I am so here for that because that is one of the greatest animes I have ever watched. I love All Might and Deku, and that whole kids in school aspect that they kind of touch upon loosely in the X-Men films is the main focus of that show. It's something that I always wanted to see in the X-Men universe, where it's more of the students just kind of being in school and training. You kind of get that in The Boys Gen Z spinoff, but I'm really excited for that. I think that sounds great. And finally, Starfire serves as the origin story for the fan favorite title character, perhaps best known as part of the Teen Titans. The show follows her adventures after she uses an ancient spaceship she discovers on her home planet of Tamaran to escape her planet and explore the stars. Along the way, she'll meet space biker crush, plant-loving Fern, and the magical princess Amethyst of Gemworld, and together they will uncover the deepest reaches of the DC universe, save space dolphins, surf Technicolor nebulas, and boldly soar into the unknown. Josie Campbell is executive producing, and Brianne Druhard is co-executive producing. Here are the title treatments for all three shows. Okay, Sergeant Rock, Teen Titans, and other rumored projects. Gunn and Safran engaged in some of their most telling exchanges whenever they were asked about DC projects they had not yet officially announced. Safran, for instance, pointed out that Daniel Craig was never attached to a Sergeant Rock movie. The actor had been floated for the role due to his creative relationship with the film's prospective director, Luca Guadagnino. I probably butchered that, and I'm sorry. Who directed Craig in 2024's Queer. But you know, we never met with Daniel. Safran said he was just an idea. So it was all just speculation and rumors. Obviously, the idea was floated, but all the articles breaking that he was in fact going to play Sergeant Rock was false. I knew that from the jump. Well, we never really announced Sergeant Rock, Gunn added. Later, a reporter asked about the status of a screenplay about the Teen Titans, a group of young superheroes including Nightwing, Cyborg, and the aforementioned Starfire, written by Anna Nogueira, who also wrote Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. The script's not ready yet, Safran said. I mean, I think we said that Anna Nogueira is writing it, and then Gunn said, we haven't said that. And then Safran said, no, I think it was out there, to which Gunn was like, all right, well, I guess it's out there now. It was something that Anna was really passionate about, and she turned over an amazing script for us, he continued. She's fiddling with that now, but it's definitely not a finished script. The reporter followed up by asking about a prospective Deathstroke Bane script written by Matthew Orton, Operation Finale, Moon Knight. You say that like we've said that there's a Deathstroke Bane script, Safran replied with a smile. He confirmed that Orton is working on a script for DC Studios, which Gunn said is something kind of like a Deathstroke Bane story. What the fuck does that mean? Something like? Seems like they're going to be making some kind of, like a buddy cop dynamic movie, but they're not confirming that it's Deathstroke and Bane. I did think that when they announced that, it was a weird choice. A Deathstroke and Bane team-up buddy cop-like movie does sound like it could work if done right, but it also sounds like it could be done really bad. Like, you gotta get on board with these dudes being bad guys. But on the other hand, I kind of like the fact that they're villains, that they're trying to make a story around to get you to like them. So when Batman has to show up and beat the brakes off them, you kind of feel bad for them, but you understand why. I think that could make for a really interesting story. I hope they pull that off. If anyone's gonna, it's James Gunn, who made Polka Dot Man cool in the Suicide Squad. These exchanges made plain one of the challenges of running a superhero studio. Even the possibility of a new movie or a TV show featuring on one of these characters as a development project that never come to pass for a host of reasons is enough to unleash a torrent of headlines. Gunn and Safran have clearly decided that it's worth the trouble to maintain an ongoing open dialogue with the media and with fans about what they're doing, but it was also evident that their decision still comes with its share of headaches. After fielding the question about Pattinson playing Batman in The Brave and the Bold, for example, Gunn's sighed in exasperation. These questions become headlines because they say, hey, have you ever talked about this? He said. We've talked about literally every permutation on the way to coming into this job in terms of how we're going to handle it. What actors we're going to continue over, what we're going to merge. We've talked about everything. Have we ever talked about Grant Gustin, star of the CW series The Flash? Yeah. Have we ever talked about Robert Pattinson? Yeah. We've talked about all those things, but serious conversations? No. Of course they're going to talk about it. People are going to ask about it. That's what's going to happen. They're going to float the idea. What is best for the DC brand? Is bringing Grant Gustin back in as the Flash the best possible thing? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Robert Pattinson is already an established Batman that everyone loves. Is this a good idea to bring him in? Let's talk about it. That's what a good studio head does. He doesn't just become closed-minded and shut everyone else out. He's willing to listen to people's conversations about these things, and I think that that's really healthy for any company to prosper. Booster Gold, Paradise Lost, Swamp Thing, Waller, and The Authority. Gunn and Safran also briefed reporters about the status of some other projects that they'd first announced in 2023. They remain in development on the Wonder Woman prequel series Paradise Lost, and they're also moving forward on developing the superhero comedy series Booster Gold after waiting on a particular showrunner creator who had expressed interest in the show but ultimately moved on. Three other titles don't quite have as much wind in their sails. The horror film Swamp Thing has been stuck in limbo while director James Mangold focused on his Oscar-nominated Bob Dylan biopic A Complete Unknown. The Peacemaker spin-off series Waller with Viola Davis has had what Gunn called a bumpy road, struggling struggling to land the right script. The show, which was meant to precede season 2 of Peacemaker, also had to be reconceived after Peacemaker wound up going into production first. The project that suffered the most, it seems, is The Authority. In 2023 presentation, Gunn spoke at length about the movie, which he said would follow the events of Superman as it tracked a team of superheroes who adopt a more unsparing ends justify the means philosophy than the Man of Steel. In the intervening 2 years, however, The Authority has moved to the back burner. It's a very, very big movie, and if you're going to do The Authority properly, Safran said, and some story elements perhaps that are in Superman and some of the other films that we've fast-tracked step a little bit on The Authority. I don't know why. Reading that, it feels like it doesn't make sense saying it out loud, but I'm going to keep going. Gunn added that the script also had a harder time coming along, so the film hasn't been as much of a priority because it has been subsumed by everything from The Brave and the Bold to Paradise Lost. They also touched upon how stuff like The Boys made it hard to find something original and compelling in The Authority because it's kind of the same tone where a bunch of superheroes are essentially a bunch of dirtbags and they're killing and doing things the not moral way and the not justified way. It's going back to the whole the ends justify the means thing. We will kill 1,000 people to save 1,000,000. Whereas in Superman's like, no, we save everybody and nobody dies. So the fact that The Boys exists in our world and it's super successful makes making an Authority film that much harder to make because it's already being done on Amazon. So I could see why they're having some problems with this. It makes sense. Then they go on to the Zack Snyder photo. Gunn still does occasionally post to his Bluesky Instagram and Twitter X accounts. Most recently, a photo of him with Zack Snyder, the filmmaker whose past tenure at the helm of DC's live-action films generated a fiercely passionate online fan base. Went instantly viral. Asked if the photo meant that they've discussed a possible creative collaboration, Gunn said that he and Snyder, who've known each other since Snyder directed Gunn's script for 2004's Dawn of the Dead, sometimes talk about different things, but they took the picture specifically because they knew it would melt the internet. And I think that's hilarious that they knew that it was going to cause an outcry from people just because of a photo. We knew that people have this view that somehow we have been pitted against each other, Gunn said. It's odd to have someone who you're friendly with in real life be the guy that is positioned as your Lex Luthor or I'm his Lex Luthor. It's just a weird dynamic that's been created between factions online. Yeah, again, I touched on this in my last News of the Week segment. I think it's all absurd. The wider DCU story. There were times when it sounded like the creative mandates Gunn and Safran had set for the larger DC universe were somewhat at cross purposes. On the one hand, Gunn said that they remain steadfast in making sure that each of these projects works as a standalone project so that you could go see Superman and you could watch Lanterns without having to see both of them. Genius! On the other hand, Safran said that the entire reason they're relaunching DC Studios as an endeavor unifying all DC projects across film, TV, animation, and video games is that people want to see these iconic characters interacting. Yes, we do. To that end, Gunn said that he has mapped out a roughly 6-year plan to tell a wider story that would result in a culminating project akin to Marvel's Avengers movies, though he still insists that each individual project works as its own thing. So if you only want to see Batman and Superman, you want to skip Wonder Woman, you want to skip Supergirl, you want to skip Lanterns, you could still show up, watch the Justice League movie, and not be lost because you haven't watched those things, and I think that that is genius. It isn't like they're chapters of an overall story, he continued. They're characters that are part of an overall story. That may seem like a distinction without a difference, but Gunn is clear that he knows where the overall story is heading. I'm intimately involved in all of that, he said. Then it goes on to talking about superheroes in Trump's America, and I don't care to touch upon that because I don't like to get political here on this channel. But all that stuff being said, the thing that stands out to me the most is the fact that they're really trying to keep this universe as easy to jump into as possible for everybody. They don't want you to feel like you have to watch all 24 of the Avengers movies before watching the new Avengers film. And I think that that's key, and that's kind of what lost a lot of fans on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At the end of the day, it's commendable what Kevin Feige is doing. It's essentially like each movie is a new chapter of a book. So it's like you can't just pick up a book, read chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then go right to chapter 16. It's like, no, you have to read every chapter. And I watch every MCU movie, and I love it for that. And I love watching a new movie and seeing how it pushes the story along. But I know a lot of people that I work with, people that I'm friends with, that are not caught up and haven't watched a lot of the TV shows. They haven't watched Loki and WandaVision, so they were lost in Doctor Strange. Why was Wanda evil? We don't know. We didn't see that show. We didn't know that we had to do homework before watching the Multiverse of Madness. And that's kind of what James Gunn realized, and the benefit that he has having worked at Marvel and having Marvel be this giant mountain of a successful franchise for as long as it has been, because now he can learn off their mistakes. So we kind of needed the MCU to get a proper DCU, and I am forever grateful for that. I love the MCU, but my heart lies with DC. I'm a Batman and a Superman fan at heart, and I'm really excited to see that. And the other most notable thing to me is the fact that James Gunn, this was like a quick little thing he added in there, but I think it's so monumentally important to harp on it, is he said, everyone knows I love Batman. I'm working very closely with the script writing process for this and overall making it come to life. And I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up directing it, because he knows, look, Superman is the biggest superhero in the world. It's the first superhero, and it is the most important movie in the DCU, establishing a tone and the new setting for this world. Superman needs to come out and at least be liked. This movie doesn't need to make $1 billion. It's probably going to lose money and make maybe like $200 to $300 million, because DC is in a bad spot right now where everyone thinks it sucks because of Snyder's universe. Maybe not the Snyder fans, but for the most part, the movies were failing financially and people weren't showing up to watch them. And that's where Superman is right now. It's going to come out in a time where people don't trust the DCU. And what Superman has to do is at least be good enough that even if it only makes like $200 million, if it has like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and like a 90% audience score, it's going to trickle out, make a little bit of money, and then it's going to find success on HBO. More people are going to see it and go, oh damn, we wish we saw that in theaters when it was there. Then when Supergirl comes out, that movie's going to make $300 to $400 million because it earned the trust back to some people after Superman came, did its thing, went to HBO, and won over people's hearts. And then after Supergirl, you're going to have the Lantern series, and if that's good, then people are going to be like, okay, the last couple of things they put out have been good. Then they put out a Batman, and that makes $800 million. And as much as Supergirl and Superman need to be good, and Lanterns does too, obviously, I think the thing that's going to tie it all together is Batman, because you need that trinity. You need the world's finest, the brave and the bold. You need Batman to come in, and his and Superman's relationship needs to really work the same way that Captain America and Iron Man's did, and that is going to be the heart of the DCU. So even though Superman is the first movie coming out of the gate, I think that Batman is arguably just as important of a person to get right. And in James Gunn's eyes, he might be looking at it like, if Batman fails, the rest of the DCU might fail. And I can't trust another creator to come in and bring the vision that I have for Batman to life. Who better to do it than me? So I wouldn't be surprised if James Gunn is the person to wind up pretty much writing this and directing it himself. He is very well equipped to make a story about a father and son. He did an excellent job with Yondu and Star-Lord, and they're not even related. And I really want to see what James Gunn would bring to a Batman project. Anyway, guys, those are just my thoughts on the updates that James Gunn and Peter Safran left out for us. I am really excited about the future of DC. I think that we have something good in store for us, something great. It is a good day to be a DC fan, and I love that James Gunn is as active as he is on social media and talking to people. Someone asked him why he responds to people online, and he said that he remembers when he was a kid meeting a famous person. I can't remember who it was, but it was like in a comic shop, and instead of them brushing him off, they like sat down and like had a conversation with him for like a half hour, and that meant a lot to him. So if some kid is on Twitter or Threads and they reach out to him saying like, hey, we're really excited for your movie, James Gunn's gonna respond and have a conversation with him, because that's him giving back to the fans the way that that one famous person gave to him when he was younger. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. I love when creatives are just as excited about these projects and talking to the fans that are going to show up and support his projects. And I commend him for that, and I respect him for that. And like I said before, in James Gunn I trust. I think that we're gonna get something amazing here. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching my thoughts. I know this was a little long and winded. If you have any opinions on this stuff, feel free to comment down below. I would love to talk to you guys about it. I try and be as active as I possibly can in the comment section. So let's have a friendly conversation about it. And if you like this, please do me a favor and like and subscribe. I would love to get you guys out more content like this. Look, I'm not trying to be a multi-millionaire here, but the ultimate goal is I want to build a community of people that are just optimistic about the movies and talk about it every day with you guys. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I could leave my job working a 9 to 5 and put out videos like this every single day. And eventually maybe we could start doing some live stuff where I could talk to you guys live about it. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I hope you have a great rest of your week, guys. And as always, I'll catch you next time.